10 acres in size. This request specifically, and that's a little hard to see, so I'll back up. This request specifically is for an outdoor tour operator, which consists of one vehicle, so it's a maximum of one vehicle to have one guide and capacity of 6 patrons, and it's used to as a guided horse tour for patrons of the coastal exploration site. So they've already got their facility built, and it operates today providing kayak tours, and this is just an extension of that use. And as such, it does not require any changes to the physical facility itself. There's no building construction or changes such as that. The existing coastal exploration site, however, does have an existing wastewater issue, which I think the applicant's going to address tonight. But to give a little bit of background on that, currently when the coastal explorations site was built and approved, there was a temporary wastewater line that was installed for a central wastewater service. The applicant either needs to have that wastewater line moved or relocated and permitted permanently, or another option they have to kind of resolve this wastewater issue is to establish an on-site septic system on the adjoining lot. They do own both lots, and our ordinance does provide that this board can allow on-site septic on an adjoining lot if both lots are owned by one property owner. So they will need to resolve that issue as part of this request. As with any SUP in your agenda packet, staff has provided the special use permit criteria and some suggested findings for you to make. I'm not going to read through each of those individually, but if you do have a question on the findings staff has proposed, I'll be happy to answer those. The TRC, or Technical Review Committee, has reviewed this request previously and does recommend conditional approval. I want to go through some of the conditions of approval that were provided by TRC. One is the applicant resolve the outstanding wastewater issues. All tours must be, the remainder of these conditions are very typical for all our outdoor tour operators. They're included in all the other permits, but I'm going to go through them real quickly. All tours must be guided from Memorial Day to Labor Day. The tour rental vehicle shall be labeled with decals or paint markings that clearly display the company name. The tours must comply with the Currituck County Code of Ordinances. We do have a parking requirement we incorporate into the use permit. In this instance, the Coastal Explorations property already has parking available, so they are meeting the parking standard, and I'm not going to read all that to you. We do allow tour companies to have reserve vehicles in the event of breakdowns or inclement weather. They can do that provided they continue to meet their parking requirements and, of course, only use one vehicle at a time for their tour. The use permit, as with all the other permits, and this is the final condition, is reviewed administratively by the staff on an annual basis. And, of course, if we identify any ongoing compliance issues or violations, we would then bring that use permit back to you for a rehearing of it. The Planning Board also heard this request at their April meeting. During that meeting, the Planning Board did recommend approval of the Coastal Explorations SUP for an outdoor tour operator. The Planning Board recommended that approval provided the outstanding wastewater issues are resolved, which thereby make this request meet the requirements of the ordinance. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have now or later in the presentation.
Any questions from Mr. Woody?
Chairman.
Mr. Patrick?
Mr. Woody, the wastewater issues, do they have to be addressed before they open up? Before they start the tours?
They'd have to be addressed if you approved it that way. Your other option, we'll get a better status update from the applicant. Your other option is to condition that somehow into your approval and give them some sort of time certain to have those completed.
Did the Planning Board have a recommendation?
Planning Board recommended they be resolved.
Before they open up,
Before
or just
they
resolved?
Open up, yes, sir.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes, sir. Mr. Woody, where will this tour be operating?
This tour will operate in the off-road area.
Be using public right-of-ways?
Yes, sir. As far as I know, they should be.
How about the beach strand?
Yes.
So this one will be operating like the rest of the tours?
Yes, sir.
That's all.
Anyone else? Would the applicant like to speak? Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Warren Edis. Address is 8 Juniper Trail, Kitty Hawk. I represent TFP LLC, who are the applicants. I guess all that I have to offer is that since the Planning Board meeting, we have secured the septic permit on the adjacent lot. It was already designed and permitted previously. We've gone back to the health department and ensured that that permit is valid. If the board finds that we need to go ahead and pursue that option, we're prepared to do that. We are here to ask you for a cure period where we can resolve the central wastewater issue. And in that time frame, if we can't resolve that issue, then we would certainly install the system next door. On-site wastewater is not the preferred option for several reasons at this site. But we realize that we do need to, currently the site is served, it's operational, but the temporary line is not in a location that is agreed to beyond a certain date with a permit we had. So now it's time to switch that over. It was not, I guess the line was installed in 2009, I think. Is that right? And so there was a 6-month temporary easement that was entered into between the county and the wastewater provider. So essentially what we're here to ask is a cure period of 90 days to either hook up to central wastewater, which we're told is forthcoming. There's DOT encroachment permits that I'm told are the last leg. We've got fast-track wastewater applications have been filed by Carolina Water. So we're told that this central wastewater is actually coming, and the DOT encroachment permits are the last piece. Tri-party agreements were executed and sent back to DOT either yesterday or today. And I think if we have this 90-day cure period, we can connect to central wastewater and not construct the on-site wastewater on the lot next door. Certainly, if those things can't happen, then we've got the permit, we've got the ability to construct the on-site wastewater system. So I guess that's my proposal, my comment is that we be given this cure period and allowed to operate.
Any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I have one. It says you're only going to have one vehicle.
Correct.
We don't have to worry about any tag-along Jeeps that'll be...
No, the tag-along item that was added was, I think, standard language. That was
Right,
never,
I understand
never
that,
request. No, tag-alongs
Your
are not
plan is to have one vehicle with a backup?
one vehicle.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Anything else?
One, if I may, 90 days, when did you know about your 2009?
6 months after that, so maybe, 2010.
6 months after that? And if we give you a grace period of 90 days to resolve that and have a permanent fixture on that, that'll work out to be just at the end of this season. So it does raise red flags in my eyes that, that you had asked for that 90 days when you had all winter to take care of it. And so it does, like I said, raises red flags and gives me pause to think, is this going to be something that you would continue? What assurance can you give us that in 90 days it's going to be a done deal?
I would hope that we can put maybe a mechanism in place that we have that reviewed, and that if, we've got the permit to do the on-site system next door. If we can't cure it within that period, then we can have the special use permit revoked. And I'm not trying to burden the county with additional administrative duties, but it does seem like a long time has elapsed since we cured this problem already. I will tell you that the agreement was entered into between the wastewater operator and another party that was providing it. It was brought to our attention when we made the special use permit application. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have cured it before then, but that's when we really became focused on it. Since that time, we've worked to secure all our permits and try to put things in place. I'm told that this could all happen quicker than 90 days, but I like a contingency, and I think that's a realistic time frame.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, do we have somebody on staff that can explain to us what is the issue? Why has it been delayed to wastewater?
I'll make a valiant attempt at that. There was Coastal Exploration was approved in 2009, and there was an agreement to run a temporary wastewater service line from the Crawl Light wastewater treatment plant through Heritage Park, connecting to the coastal explorations site. As part of that agreement, there was a licensure, or was it what was the term for the legal document I'm looking for?
The county granted a license to the utility contractor to allow for that line to cross the county's property for a period of 12 months.
The 12 months expired in December of 2009. At that point, I will say we've had some ongoing correspondence with the owner of the property, and more specifically with the person that was to provide the utility service to resolve that. The best I can explain, or to my understanding, is that the person that was providing the utility service has not been able to secure the proper permits to move that central wastewater line out of Heritage Park's property and into the NC-12 and Crawler Village Road rights-of-ways to run it down the side of the roads as wastewater is often ran. When this application came forward for a use permit, we then added, the TRC added that as a condition of approval, that line be moved. What we've encouraged Quiable to do, and they have done, is explore an alternative scenario where they could actually go back and permit an on-site wastewater system. So we're kind of at that nexus now where we need to make a decision and get the line, quite frankly, get the wastewater line off of the Heritage Park property.
Was this not delayed because of the need to, or the desire to approach regionalization as we were working to see if we could come up with a regional plan so that Crawler Light plant could be moved eventually?
I don't know that I can, I don't know if I'm not sure I know why it was delayed by the utility provider.
It was not delayed because of that.
There's a business, if I'm not mistaken, that's already operating there. So this is just addition to what's already operating.
Is the line causing an issue with Heritage Park? I mean, can you see it being a problem for 90 days?
Not for 90 days. No, I think for the future of Heritage Park and our ability to develop that park, we don't want the line running through part of the property.
Okay.
But no, considering we're not doing something in 90 days, I think we'll be okay. But we need to set a date certain and get the line moved. We do need to do that.
Well, I think you'll leave, Mr. Weatherly, do you know of any reason why we would have any difficulty coming up with an acceptable solution to this through the normal procedures? Because one of the suggestions we have, one of the conditions is that they come up with a cure that would be acceptable to the county engineer.
I'm fine with the 90 days. I think Quiable's doing what they can, got the permits, so I'm okay.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Weatherly regarding supervising that?
Just so that I'm clear, with this construction over the 90-day period during the busy season, is that going to be some disruption to Heritage Park?
Yeah, I'm going to, maybe Eric can answer that, but I would assume they would just disconnect the service
Yes, sir.
and take
Okay,
it
so
out
there
maybe in
wouldn't be
the
any
off-season.
kind of disruption or
Be
maintenance or construction done?
Minimal work on it, yes, sir.
Greenfield is already there.
Mr. Chairman? Sir, I think you just said that you'd be willing to have the permit pulled if you didn't have it finished in 90 days?
Yes.
So all you're asking for is a 90-day permit then? Or you're asking a one-year permit with a 90-day revocation if we don't?
If that's possible.
Okay.
That gives you some assurance that we're not just telling you, to use a cliche, we're not kicking the can down the road.
Works for me.
Okay, I don't have anybody signed up to address this in the public hearing phase, but I'll open the public hearing. If anybody does want to address it, you'll have to come forward and be sworn in. Okay. All right, well, not have anyone come forward, I'm going to close the public hearing then. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to recommend approval with the findings of facts by the staff and the 90-day cure period being part of the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Got you 90 days.
Thank you.
Next item, public hearing and action, PB 12-07, Corolla Jeep Rentals and Tours. Request for a special use permit for an outdoor recreation facility. The property is located in Corolla, North Carolina, tax map 102, parcels 23, 24, and 25, Fruitville Township Beach. Anyone that wants to address this matter will need to be sworn in as well. It's a quasi-judicial matter, meaning testimony acceptable will be matter of which you are expected to be expert, not matters of opinion. So come forward and be sworn in if you want to talk to this matter here. Put your left hand on the Bible. Left hand, raise your right hand. Everybody a chance to get placed. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, thank you. Be seated. And Mr. Woody, elaborate for us, please.
I'll do my best again. This is a request for a special use permit. In this instance, the request is for a private outdoor recreation facility. The subject property is zoned RO2. It's in the off-road area of the Outer Banks. The 2006 land use plan designates this as conservation in the Crova sub-area, and the site's approximately 40 acres. And specifically what the applicant's requesting is a use permit for a private outdoor recreation facility that includes kayak launching and outdoor utility vehicle tours. And just to get it out there, outdoor utility vehicles are basically ATVs, and that's how the county regulates those, and we've verified that with the sheriff's department. So I'm going to say OUV, but more or less that's an ATV. Kind of looks like a gator, like a larger type ATV. All tours for this particular property originate from the Corolla Jeep Rentals and Tours property at 1070 Ocean Trail. So there is an outdoor tour operator that was permitted several years ago in Corolla. The location is just north of the Corolla Inn, just north of the hotel there. There are no proposed structures on this property in the off-road area, and what the applicant is proposing specifically is 4 tours per day, consisting of 4 kayak tours with a maximum of 8 persons on a 2-hour tour, and 4 OUV tours per day with a maximum of 8 persons on a 2-hour tour. And the kayaks and the OUVs themselves will be stored on the property overnight. They're not proposing to haul those back and forth from the paved road area up here each day. Like I said a second ago, the Code of Ordinances does regulate these as ATVs, and I will note that our Code of Ordinances limits the number. First of all, it requires ATVs, or in this case OUVs, to have permits, as you're aware, and we limit a maximum of 2 permits per year per property owner. So obviously this request or this property couldn't accommodate more than 2 ATV permits. So that's the maximum number of vehicles they'll be able to have and comply with the County Code of Ordinances. Another thing of note is this property is on the south side of Penny's Hill, and they're proposing to launch the kayaks from the southwest side of that sand dune. In the UDO, we require development on certain dunes, Penny's Hill being one, to do a geological survey, which they have completed that geological analysis, and it's actually at I left a copy at each commissioner's place there to see. And what the purpose of that is to show that the development or the use of the property will not adversely impact the movement of the sand dune, and the geological survey kind of gives some outlines or criteria for how this proposed use can operate and not impact the sand dune. So the summary of that is they've completed that task in the UDO. Another thing that came up in this particular request from an ordinance standpoint is planning staff had some questions about the legal access to the property. We asked originally the applicant to either indicate that he has use of 2 private right-of-ways that can get to this property, and if he doesn't have use of the 2 private right-of-ways, to provide documentation or a legal opinion that an ocean access easement is at least 20 foot in width per the UDO. And what you'll see on the top of that packet I handed you is a legal opinion regarding the use of a access easement to access this property. The legal opinion provided by the applicant provides that the easement does exceed the required 20 feet in width. So I just want to note those 2 things and point you to the documentation we've received regarding those. Since this is a special use permit, you are required to make findings of fact and make sure the application meets certain criteria. That information is included in your packet. I do want to call attention to one of the criteria or one of the findings you have to make tonight. We do require that special uses not injure the value of adjoining or budding property and be in harmony with the area in which it is located. Initially, on receiving the application, staff did not receive or review any information to suggest a finding for this specific criteria, the use permit. So what I would direct the board to tonight is, as you take your public testimony, just keep in mind you'll need to make a finding based on the testimony provided during the public hearing of whether or not this property is in harmony or does not impact the value of adjoining properties. Again, staff did not receive information from the applicant to make this determination, so you'll need to keep that finding in mind as you go through the public hearing tonight.
Would that require an appraisal from a realtor stating that?
It does. It requires competent evidence to indicate that there would be a negative impact on property values, for instance. I'm sure the county attorney can elaborate on that if you like, or okay.
Whoever's presenting the testimony.
Whoever's presenting the testimony, yeah.
I'll just say quickly, the burden is on the applicant to meet the requirements of the ordinance and to show that through the presentation of evidence. And once the applicant has done that, then the burden shifts to those in opposition to show otherwise.
I'm going to continue. The TRC, the Technical Review Committee, also reviewed this application. They had a number of comments in recommending conditional approval, and I want to go through those comments. One, the applicant provide the required 20-foot legal access, and I provide you with the legal opinion that we received on that. The applicant addressed the concerns raised by the fire marshal, and he is working to do that as far as access goes. That the use permit be valid only in conjunction with a use permit for the outdoor tour operator issued at Corolla Jeep Rentals and Tours. So what that's saying is, in order to use this property for outdoor recreation, they've got to have their use permit at their horse tour, their outdoor tour operator base in Corolla, to remain valid. So both permits are now connected should this one be approved. All tours must originate from the property in Corolla. All commercial transactions must occur at the Corolla storefront. There should be a maximum of 4 kayak tours and 4 OUV tours per day. In accordance with the Code of Ordinances, there should be no more than 2 OUVs at any one time for the property. Kayaks and OUVs must be labeled with decals or paint markings that display the company name. That helps us enforce our ordinances and the terms of the permit. Tours shall operate during daylight hours only. Tour patrons have access to the restrooms at Corolla Jeep Rentals and Tours at the Corolla location. Tour participants shall not enter upon private property along the canals of the Currituck Sound. And finally, that tours comply with the provisions of the Currituck County Code of Ordinances. Again, those are TRC recommendations should you approve the use permit tonight. The planning board also heard this request at their April meeting. During that meeting, the planning board did recommend denial of the special use permit due to one of the special use permit criteria not being met, specifically that the use will injure the value of adjoining or abutting property and will not be in harmony with the area in which it is located. And with that, I'll answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Mr. Woody?
Mr. Wood, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead.
I read somewhere that restrooms were an issue from the health department. I was trying to find it.
It's on page 34.
Okay.
Albemarle Regional Health. There was a question asked, will they be provided?
Right, and that's my question. Restrooms there, because we know where, if there's not restrooms, what happens?
We have required that, and this is obvious, but Mr. Meredith make his restrooms available at the Corolla location for his customers. Other than that, we are not requiring a porta-john be placed on the property, as that really doesn't seem like a typical or an ideal outcome. There are restrooms available, of course, at the Crova Beach Park as well, in the off-road area.
Which is how far away?
6 miles? Is that right? Milepost 21?
That's a long ways to go.
I would say that and I'll just throw this out there, if you leave a tour in Corolla, whether you're getting on a kayak or sitting in a Jeep, either way, you're away from a bathroom for 2 hours. So I'm not sure that's a lot different than the scenario we have for the other tours that operate.
Thank you.
Didn't someone get approval to operate from somewhere in Swan Beach or Corova last year or year before?
They did. We have a issue, and I probably should have said that. We have one other special use permit that's been approved for outdoor recreation for this type of kayak launch facility. It didn't have the OUVs, but it had Segway tours, if you remember. And it was approved in Wild Horse Estates subdivision, and we included the same conditions, basically on very similar conditions on that one that we have on this one, to at least be consistent. So yes, there is one that operates.
Mr. Chairman, I got one more question. These OUVs, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Typically, they're two-cycle motors, two-cycle engines, right?
I would think so. I'll have to let the applicant answer that, though.
Okay.
No further questions, Mr. Woody.
One last question. Going back to the existing operation, how close is that to residential property?
To the Wild Horse Estates, well, it's in a residential subdivision, so pretty close.
Have we had any complaints about it, to your knowledge?
We have not, no.
Thank you.
But, Mr. Woody, these were for kayak tours, not the off-road vehicles, right?
Yeah, the operation at Wild Horse Estates was for kayak tours, and they take Segways up there.
Which is, they don't make the noise that an ATV does.
No.
So virtually, you don't have any complaints. They're not making any noise.
I don't have there was not ATVs associated with that permit.
My question wasn't necessarily just for noise, it was just about the operation in its entirety.
Nothing else from Mr. Woody? The applicant would like to speak? Name and address for the record, please.
My name's Banks Meredith, 1070 Ocean Trail, Corolla, North Carolina. First of all, I'd like to thank the ladies and gentlemen of the board for your service. Give you a brief history on me and my company. I'm the second oldest tour company in Corolla and the first to start renting Jeeps up there. I've always taken a more respectful approach with all my tours since day one, realizing that we are operating in a residential area. Aside from my private tracts of land that are spread out in the 4x4 area, well, let me backtrack a little bit. Before we had to restructure my business and start guiding the vehicles out, we had GPSs in the Jeeps, and we do 4 trips a day, and every trip I would alter the course so that the Jeeps were never passing by any of the same houses twice up there, just out of respect to the people up there. Also, currently, I think I'm the only company that doesn't allow my groups to get out of the vehicles. We will on our private property, but we don't unload 15, 20 people or 25 people, depending on what the size of the group is, in the residential areas. And I can tell you that 99% of the other companies do kind of inundate the public right-of-ways up there with their tours. I've been honestly trying since day one to be a little more respectful up there. I do have a total of 415 acres located up in the four-wheel drive area, in a commercial building with 4 retail spaces, 3 office spaces in the paved areas of Corolla, which I operate out of one of the locations, or one of the retail spaces. One of the main things my father taught me about business was if you don't own the property you're in or using, you really don't have much. And let's see, where was I going with that? So over the years, I've literally invested everything I've made back into Currituck County, buying property, trying to disappear up in that four-wheel drive area, whereas everybody else seems to be really going around the public roads, mostly getting up to Corova. It's rare that any of my tours make it north of the Washwoods Life Saving Station. And my current proposal is really, I'll tell you, last year I had probably the worst year of my life business-wise. whether it was the market being saturated by all the tours or just the economy. So this is kind of a last-ditch attempt to diversify my company. I feel like I'm in it for the long haul, whereas a lot of these guys are operating a little too many vehicles up there, and it seems like they're ready to just burn out quickly when I've got a lot more invested interest up there. Let's see. And I guess when you only rent your space and you don't own your building up there, it's probably a easier mentality to have while you're up there. I'd be happy to answer any questions or concerns the board might have about any of the activities that I might be doing on this 40-acre tract. I have tried to, and Ben, what's the setback for a house to be built on a property line? 25 feet or better? Do you know that off the top of your head?
It's going to vary between 10 and 25, depending on which property line.
And
Yeah.
I know the planning board kind of scoffed at my 50-foot barrier on all the property lines, which I was really just basing off. I know Kitty Hawk's like 25, so I was just really doubling what the setbacks would be for a house to be built right up on the property line. And I just really trying hard. The real fact of the matter is I could build 3 20-bedroom houses on the same 40 acres and have a capacity of more people on that 40 acres, and what's that, 8 ATVs, or I could build a shanty town like Corolla Bay and put a whole bunch of houses in that same 40 acres, and that would, 15 houses, that'd be 30 ATV tour permits, for that same 40 acres. So I just hope logic prevails. That's really about it. I really feel that this is a pretty low impact for the area up there. Not building these big houses and keeping it natural. I have no intentions of. I have a 75 acre outside this 40 acres that I duck hunt and have since I was probably 4 years old, and I have really no intentions of ever developing it, as long as with the ecotourism I can help make the payments for it. So be happy to answer any questions or concerns you
Any
guys
questions,
have.
Mr. Meredith?
I have one. Mr. Meredith,
Yes, sir.
the concerns I've got are the noise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying your company does this, but we have trouble now with Jeeps going where they're not supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people with jet ski rentals that say, don't go past that buoy. Guess what?
Happens all the time.
And
right?
so if you get a person on an ATV, you don't see them, and they're all over the place. And plus, that's why I ask if they're a 2-cycle engine.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are loud.
Yeah, all of them are 4-stroke. So
Well, they're still loud. To me, the peace and tranquility is why people go up there. And I realize, me personally, right now, the kayak tours, great idea. Well, I wish I'd have thought about it. But the ATVs, I have concerns.
I can maybe put your mind at ease. I did a little research after my planning board where one of the surrounding property owners, or might be a surrounding property owner, was raised that same concern, and I've just got a list of examples here for sound decibels. Normal talking is 70 dB, okay? A raised voice is 76 dB. A very loud person is 82 dB. Shouting, screaming would be 88 dB. And all the studies have found that, and that's within 20 inches of the person yelling or the vehicle or anything like that. But the way the ratio works is at 24 feet away from the vehicle or the person yelling, you're dropping 28 decibels. So just to put this into perspective, at 24 feet, a normal person talking, going from 70 right up next to them would be 42. The raised voice would be 48. A very loud person would be 54. Shouting would be 60. A vacuum cleaner is 80 decibels. Street traffic is right around 70 decibels. Most of the industry standards for ATVs are right around 96 decibels at the muffler.
And you're going to have 4 tours a day, right?
Yes, sir.
And how long is each tour?
About 2 hours.
So we got 8 hours a day.
Really about an hour and a half actually on the vehicles, because there will be some shuttle time getting them to and from the our
So we got
location.
6 hours a day daylight.
6
4
hours.
tours at buck and a half,
About-
6 hours.
We'll figure 8 hours a day.
Okay.
Let's see. At 24 feet, I will tell you that the ATVs or the OUVs, however you like to call them, at 24 feet, they go from 96 to 68 decibels, which is about the equivalent of a blender at the same 24 feet away. So a lawnmower, really,
And now that's only one machine, right?
yeah, that is one.
Okay, so if we got 4, I know that one might not be any louder than the other, but it's got to increase it some.
Yeah, I mean, they're not. I'm not saying they're quiet. They do make aftermarket parts, mufflers, called stealth mufflers for hunting and stuff. And I mean, I wouldn't be beyond equipping them with that, and you can get a reduction of about 50% with the stealth exhaust systems. So
Will these tours be guided?
yeah, everything's gonna be structured. It's not the Baja. We're not getting out there and zipping around. I've got the biggest natural barrier in Currituck County. Really muffling most of the sound, along with all the oaks and stuff. There's a lot of vegetative barriers, in between. Along with most of my oceanfront neighbors. Seems like the ones that may have written letters or complained, they've got a 45-foot dedicated road in between my property and their property. So in addition to my trail being probably 50 feet, off of the Ocean Pearl dedication.
How close will your tours go to any of these homes?
What's that?
How close will your tours go to any of these homes?
Aside the Beasley's, Mrs. Beasley's property, I made sure that we went way around hers, just because, out of respect, one of the longtime locals up there. Never by any of the other ones.
You say way around, how much is, I'm just wondering,
I think their cottage is.
couple hundred yards?
Let's say 100 yards at least, 150 yards. And that all could be, I can tinker with that. I think the permits are only good for a year and renewable. Would appreciate a chance, and if it is a problem, which I can almost assure you I run the tightest ship and the tightest business up there, self-regulate and doing things that, I wish the county would kind of regulate all the other companies to do, but I'm really trying to be one of the better companies up there.
Mr. Woody, I have one more question, and I'll be quiet. Can we grant the kayaks and leave out the ATVs?
Yes.
Chairman, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Now, you're talking about four-stroke motors.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about willingness to put the stealth mufflers on there.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for Mr. Woody. The people that adjoin his property could have 2 ATVs, 2 cycles if they want to. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the adjoining neighbors I'm looking at the tracks here. How many is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just, I don't know, about 20 ATVs could be owned by the private neighbors, 2 cycles going up and down the right-of-ways. Where can they ride those?
Their
Give them a
property.
permit, they gotta be able to ride them somewhere.
Their properties, the public rights of way, or the beach.
So we allow people to have ATVs
Yes, we do.
up and down the beach. Mr. Meredith is asking to take his ATVs on his own private 40 acres of property.
That's correct.
But the neighbors can have two and run up and down the right-of-ways with two-cycle and do whatever they want to.
Yes. Well, yes. Obviously, they can't break any laws we have, but yes.
Do they injure the adjoining property values?
I don't know that Mr. Woody's
I don't know that I'm qualified to answer
expert to
that.
testify to
Yeah.
that.
But my ask question, they're not running 6 hours a day either,
They can
in
if
one,
they
in
want
one
to.
place. I mean, they're all over the place, they're, you know.
They can if they
Well,
want to.
that's hypothetical at this point, though. I think
Oh,
really
yeah.
we need to get on with the public hearing if we can, so if you
Well,
have further
I'm-
questions.
I just asking a question because we're constantly being told from the people in the North Beach they want the tours out of the right-of-ways, away from their neighborhoods, and done away with, and somebody is offering to do it on their own property. And we're holding them to a different standard for noise than we hold the general public. That's my point. Thank you.
I think we put deputies on those things and send them up and down the beach, too.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, how far in the wooded land will your closest trail be? I know there's a wood line that pretty well runs down that access road you're talking about in the back.
Uh-huh.
I'm looking at aerial photograph right now. How far in from that road will your closest trail be?
I tried to just come in. Actually, the dedicated Ocean Pearl easement ends about midway up the 40 acres, running from south to north. And then it's private property, my private property, which really all 5 of the homeowners are actually cutting across. Well, they're not because they're all rental machines out there, but they are cutting across my property to get to their houses. And I can tell you that I chase out, I've never given anybody a trespassing ticket because it just seems like a big hassle every time I confront somebody for even being on my property. But there's, I'd say, every trip that I'm out there, there's equally as many private ATVs or people staying in the houses driving around on my property. You know, and I mean, to answer your question, we would go in on my property, and really the trail, the way I drew it out was trying to be respectful to all the homeowners, really on the west side. My northern neighbor, I have the Penny's Hill blocking it, 40-foot living sand dune blocking any noise or thing from the Brocks on the north side. And then, I mean, the trees, the oak hummocks and the hills and the terrain are, it's pretty neat back there. It's a maritime forest, so it's pretty grown up.
May I ask one more question?
Go ahead.
Would you be willing to put the stealth mufflers on there?
Yes, sir. No
Because the
problem.
noise is my big concern. And then Mr. O'Neill brings up a great point, and, you know, it's a great point, and I never thought about it, so thank you for that. But I think the stealth mufflers, like you said, I think hunters use things like that. Because my main concern is the noise.
Yeah, I would, anything to make this work and not lose everything I have up there would be a good scenario for myself.
Anything further from Mr. Meredith? I'll open the public hearing then. The folks that would like to speak to this matter, please come forward. Don't have a list of you. Just introduce yourself, give your name and address for the record, please.
Rebecca Beasley.
You'll need to move that microphone down a little bit if you can. Mr. Woody can help you.
Rebecca Beasley, and I live in Chesapeake, Great Bridge. We have a place that joins Mr. Meredith, or he surrounds us, basically. And as far as his saying that he does not go on to or bother, he even advertised our property for his tours. We have an old hunt club. We're 5 generations. It belonged to my husband's family, all 5 generations. And it was originally the O'Neill property, and the Hunt Club has been there all these years. He was advertising it as the Guggenheim O'Neill Hunt Club. He even had an advertisement advertising our house with no permission from us. He also has had people touring our property. They have been seen there without permission, milling all over our yard. So whatever he says about his consideration of everyone is not so, because he has not been considerate of us without having a permit. So I object to it because of the noise. I object to it because I don't want them milling all over my property, which is exactly what he'll be doing, because it's the only attraction back there. There's nothing else, just vacant land as far as where he is and where he's touring. We have the only house back there. So that's my objection to it.
Thank you, Ms. Beasley. Any questions for?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Ms.
Ms.
Beasley? Ms. Beasley? If you would, please, how much property do you have back there?
We have a little more than an acre, like an acre and 3/4.
And that includes the old Hunt Club and everything?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
We face the sound.
Where
Okay.
is it on the map, Mr. Woody? Where is her house on the map?
Here's the best way to look at it.
I can't see.
You can see it on the screen.
If we go to the aerial view, there's Ocean Front.
We're right, you see that cross, I think, from what I can see from here, that goes across at the sound down there?
You look here, you can see Beasley Lane.
The house, all right, there it is. See that little jib?
Right here, this new
No,
come in.
the other one,
There it is.
going back,
So
right?
She actually crosses
Yeah.
the property.
That's actually a different owner there. So this one? That'd be the 10-acre tract to the north. It's that one.
Yeah. Ours is right in the middle there, that little
Your
jib that goes between the green lines.
your easement goes through the tract of property that he owns,
No,
or it goes around it?
just goes around ours,
Okay.
yeah. It also goes to, there's a piece of property across, it goes across the front of us,
He crosses
that
right
takes
there.
up the, Mr. Euler, who's in Chicago.
You say you don't live there. Do y'all come and stay there?
Yes, we come and stay there. My husband hunts there. He's been hunting there all his life. He was born and raised there.
I got some relatives buried up there.
Thank you, Ms. Beasley. Next person.
Good evening. My name is Mike Long. My address is 1437 Ocean Pearl, and I wanted to speak in opposition to this SUP. I'm opposed to the SUP request for an outdoor recreational facility by Banks Meredith. My opposition has nothing to do with the current SUP that Banks Meredith and Crawley Jeep Rentals has as an outdoor tour operator. I believe in the free enterprise system and in people operating successful businesses. I have owned my own business for the last 18 years and know how important hard work and persistence are. I also know how important it is as a business owner, to be sure your use is in harmony with the area in which your business operates. I specifically am opposed to the request on the basis that it does not meet the criteria of the use being in harmony with the area in which it operates. This is also the reason your planning board recommended a denial of this SUP. I'd also like to offer some information that is not part of the SUP criteria that I feel is important. Mr. Meredith states in his application that this is an eco tour and that it will not impact the property or the surrounding land and that the property is in its natural state. After Mr. Meredith bought the property, he had roads cut through the property with heavy equipment, roads large enough for Jeeps to drive on. This certainly did not leave the property in its natural state. Another point is there has been only one other SUP issued in the four-wheel drive for an outdoor recreational facility, and it is for a kayak tour in Wild Horse Estates. When Wild Horse Estates was originally developed, the covenants specifically indicated this use wasn't allowed in this neighborhood. I know the commissioners do not get involved in covenant issues, but the point is that in Ocean Beach, where there are no covenant conditions like this, if you live or buy property, you can reasonably assume that the use will be residential. Also, this particular use, outdoor recreational facility, has been deleted from the new UDO. Ocean Beach, for those of you that may not know, is the first neighborhood you reach when you come down the beach. It's about a mile and a half from the paved road. It's a relatively small neighborhood, a little over a mile long, with 3-acre oceanfront lots on the east side, dissected by Ocean Pearl Road, and soundfront lots in the Federal Preserve on the west. There are currently 17 houses, one being a primary residence, 5 second homes, and 11 rental homes. Keep in mind that people come to the four-wheel drive area to rent. When they come there to rent, they're doing so to be in a natural environment away from commercial-like activity that exists in the paved road area. I agree that Mr. Meredith has private property rights. He can drive all over his property. He can have 2 ATVs or OUVs for his personal use. But the use of his property for an outdoor recreational facility to generate income from fee-paying tour groups is a different story. This activity infringes on our property rights as members of the Ocean Beach neighborhood, and this is clearly not what anyone wants. My wife and I have been in contact with 15 property owners in Ocean Beach, all of which oppose this SUP request, and I believe the board has received emails from most of those folks voicing their opposition. I'd like to repeat that our opposition has nothing to do with Mr. Meredith's current SUP as an outdoor tour operator running his horse tours. We are opposed to the issuance of a special use permit for the special use in our neighborhood of an outdoor recreational facility. Putting aside all the questions, complaints, and other comments on this case, the fact remains this SUP can be denied because the applicant does not meet only one of the required criteria. We respectfully ask that you vote to deny this request on the basis that this use is not in harmony with our neighborhood. Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Long?
Yeah, I'd like for him to show me where his house is in relation to what's being requested.
I'm lot 9B.
They adjoin it. Does your property adjoin Mr. Meredith's property?
It's on the opposite side of Ocean Pearl from the property that Mr. Meredith owns.
If I could, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Long, is it pretty much sand dunes there, or is there a lot of maritime forest in the area, in your neighborhood there?
Well, we're on the secondary dune. Most of the houses on Ocean Pearl are on the secondary dune, not the primary dune. And then there's Ocean Pearl behind us, and then mostly maritime forest is what the property that Mr. Meredith owns.
And is his the only one that's still, covered with the maritime forest? I mean, I'm just trying to get a picture of that.
Well, there's Federal Preserve back there, and there's
Okay.
a couple other lots back there also on.
Is there a lot of, wildlife in that area?
Yes.
Okay. I'll just ask, do you have a lot of visitation by the horses?
Yes.
Okay. So it is pretty much of a covered forested area with not a whole lot of disturbance.
Other than the tours coming through.
Well, mainly that's who, I think we have maybe 300 permanent residents, so mainly what's up there, outside of them are tourists. So,
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of stuff going on back there other than the people traveling up and down Ocean Pearl to get to the vacation houses and the tours.
how busy is it in September, October, November?
Not very.
Okay. And the vacationers who come there, do you think they would like to have something else to do besides just the beach?
I think that they come there because of where it's at and being away from everything. I don't think they're looking for more things to do. I think that's the reason they come there, is because they don't have to deal with all the things that are down on the paved road and all
Okay.
that activity.
All right, well, it's supposition on my part and yours too. We're not the experts, I don't suppose. We
That's
have
right,
a
it's opinion
traffic
testimony.
count. That's
Any
all.
further questions for Mr. Long? Next person. Thank you, Mr. Long.
Hi, I'm Marie Long, Mike's wife, 1437 Ocean Pearl. I really only swore in case he got cut off while he was talking. But I did want to say, in listening to Mr. Meredith, and I will repeat what Mike said, we are not opposed or complaining or anything else about his current horse tour. This is about a specific special use permit for an outdoor recreation facility. And as we've all said, the criteria we don't think it meets is that the use is not in harmony with the neighborhood. But the two things I wanted to address that Mr. Meredith said toward the end, he made a comment about every time he comes up there, he says ATVs. I'm there all the time. I know of two neighbors that have ATVs that they own, Mr. Rudolph at one end, Mr. Brock at the other. I've never seen Mr. Rudolph on his. I just know he has it. I've seen Mr. Brock on his once when he was trying to come to my house. I have not seen anyone, definitely not running around on ATVs. I don't even see ATVs in our neighborhood. And the second thing I wanted to address was his comment that the people in the north end of Ocean Beach are driving on his property to get to their homes. That is not correct. They have a right-of-way. They come in the same easement that he is saying he's entitled to, and then they have a right-of-way to get to their homes. Otherwise, they are landlocked. It's always been considered Ocean Pearl and went all the way from the north all the way down to where I am. There was a point where Mr. Meredith blocked off part, which was his private property. There was a big ruckus about that, and somehow the lines got taken down. But I did want to be sure to state that those people are not driving on his property. They have a right of way to get through their own property, the same one he uses to get to his. And your question about the wildlife and the maritime forest and everything, the whole area it's quiet in there, and there it is mostly sand and maritime forest. The sand, obviously, from the sand dunes, and what used to be maritime forest in its natural state is no longer a maritime forest in its natural state because it was bulldozed through, and these were created. I witnessed that happening. I saw it happening, and I'm sure Mrs. Beasley can attest to the same thing. So it is not in its natural state. That's all I want to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Any questions for her?
Is there any way I can rebuttal to
When we finish? Okay. Anybody else want to testify in opposition? Ms. Beasley again? You have something additional to add?
Well, something I should have said when I was up there.
Come ahead.
All right, the horses.
The record shows Ms. Beasley again.
Yeah. The horses stay in our yard a lot of the time. They have babies in our yard. We wake up in the morning and a female has had she's having a baby that jumps up and runs all over the yard. I mean, we have them all the time. We have a big oak tree in the back side that they like to get up there and scratch. And the ATVs would bother them. They would scare them. Because when we're there and we're getting ready to go to the beach or something, if someone starts their truck or car, they usually will run off and go back, either over to the beach or back down the sound. So they will bother the wild horses.
Anyone else? Okay. Okay, I will close the public hearing then. Mr. Meredith, you have a chance to rebut.
With all due respect to the Longs and especially Mrs. Beasley, every house on the beachfront is a rental machine, including the Longs. They rent it out. They've got guests there, and Mrs. Long just recently called the police, the sheriff's deputies, on two of the landowners from Kentucky. I'm sure you recall this. They were back there riding on their own property and on my property, and she called the sheriff's deputies on them. The Longs also, at one point, and I'm not sure where this went, but were trying to purchase the Beasley property, which I don't think that transpired, but the propaganda started with Mrs. Long, I'm pretty sure, by the emails that I received from some of the homeowners that are not upset with me. Mr. Trevette, the gentleman that just built the newest house on the thing, stopped by my shop this morning. You know, it's not everybody on the oceanfront row in opposition, I can assure you.
Mr. Meredith, let me address the fact that what those people might think or so is not admissible here unless they're here to actually be questioned about that.
That's fine.
And the motivation is also not admissible too. We understand that, you know, where some of the comments may be coming from, but we're not allowed to consider that.
Understood.
Right.
And as far as the horses, I don't know how out of touch. I know Mrs. Beasley, with all due respect, probably has been out to her 1930s camp probably twice in the last couple years. There is the area has changed so much up there. And the Longs, I see them sitting on the beach and putting up with every guy with his big jacked up truck and mufflers with glass packs that are definitely above a 96 dB rating, driving up and down the beach, and they can just sit there and tolerate that. And I just find it highly hypocritical to rent your house, make money off of it, and then, you know, I'm trying to set land aside, do a structured eco tour by kayak and ATVs, you know, a very low impact. I'm not going to go in there and, you know, Baja and race around my property. If it rains after this last monsoon we had the other day, I haven't been in there, and I probably haven't been on my own property aside from going up the hill and showing the people Monkey Island, the duck blinds, and all that stuff in probably a week or so. And you know, the tour is structured. You know, these are families that were taken out there. I wanted to show them how the boats were being built. I wanted to have a handicap accessible duck blind where I could have a spread of decoys out there and maybe some tame mallards that the kids could throw a handful of corn to, and explain to them how people like the Beasleys actually made it out there for all the years. Commercial gunning, moving into the Guggenheims, stepping into it and buying it from them, and going to sport hunting after commercial gunning was outlawed. You know, so it's a misconception and spread mostly by propaganda that I was planning on using her house. I had no intentions. You know, by water, if I take my kayaks out through Jack's Creek, that was one of the things I would tell. I would elaborate on the history not only of the Beasleys and how that transpired, but also, you know, all the industrial money coming down and buying up all the property in Currituck, the Knights, and it's just not. I don't know what they're thinking. I'm not going to be zipping around out there. I'm highly respectful and trying my hardest. So I just hope that sets not only these guys' minds at ease, but as you guys as well. So
thank you, Mr. Meredith.
Thank you.
All right. Gentleman and lady of the board.
I'm going to ask Mr. Woody, this is for me, if I wanted to approve the kayaks and not the ATVs, that you said that's possible?
Yes, it is.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the kayaks and not the ATVs.
I would second that motion.
Okay, any discussion?
I would submit to this board that every tour up there is not in harmony. You just approved one just ahead of this one, put in right in people's neighborhoods, didn't have any concern about where they were going, didn't even ask where the map was going to be, where they were going. We have how many operating up there right now? How many tours?
You're permitted up there, Mr. Woody?
We have,
8.
well, 9 now. We just
9.
approved our 9th one.
Have 9 tours operating up there in the public right-of-ways, going by people's driveways, out on the beach, and that's in harmony. But a gentleman wants to do one on his own property, is willing to muffle the vehicles, and we have a problem with that
May I respond?
when I finish.
Okay.
I would submit to the board that if his is not in harmony, then nothing that's going on up there is in harmony.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important for me to establish for you the legal premise in North Carolina. If a certain use is allowed by a special use permit under North Carolina law, it is presumed to be in harmony with the area in which the use is allowed by special use permit. So it is therefore incumbent upon those in opposition to establish how it is not in harmony. But you basically have already made the legislative determination by allowing this use as a special use permit that it is in harmony, absent any other evidence to the contrary.
Well, one of the questions I think that it raised was the fact that if any property owner could have 2 ATVs and could rent their property and allow those tenants there to use those ATVs, what's the difference between that and having a group,
May I
another parcel
respond?
doing it?
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not 6 hours in one spot. I mean, if they're going to ride the ATVs all over the beach and up and down the road, there's 15 miles of beach they can ride them on. They're not 6 hours going around in a circle.
I don't think his proposal is for them to be racing 6 hours.
I didn't say they were racing, but they're staying in one spot. It's one tour. Each tour is 2 hours, hour and a half, 4 tours, 6 hours in one spot.
I'm looking at his map, I see several places where he has stops for people. I would assume, could the applicant come back, Mr. Chairman?
To respond?
Yeah, I
If
want to ask him a question.
You asked him a question,
Is
certainly.
it your intention that when somebody gets on an ATV, they're on it for 2 hours?
No.
Or will they be stopping and doing different things?
We're going to stop and tell them about the living or migrating sand dune. Same thing I do on most all my tours. We're going to stop at different points of interest, the duck blind, the juniper skiffs, and break it up that way. I mean, 40 acres, I doubt I would pass the same spot twice. You know, it's going to be a continuous loop, mostly traversing the border with the refuge, and then you know, with stops here and there. It's not, I would say, would literally assure you that one tour is only going to pass the same place once.
So you say this hour and a half tour is just going to make one lap and that's it?
One loop, probably end up, you know, with the view from on top of the hill where we finish up there. And I would also like to bring to your attention, since all this has come up, that you know, last year I stood before you guys trying not to get one of my competitors permits for 2 separate locations. You know, and I just don't, I can't see the difference between my neighbors and every other person up in that 4-wheel drive area that's being affected by the other tour companies. And my proposal, I've got a big commercial building up there where I had a tenant go bankrupt on me this year, so I'm stuck with 2 spaces in my commercial building for the summer. I won't be able to get anybody in them. I could have applied for a 3rd vehicle maybe for this tour, but what I did was trying to keep my impact and my footprint as little as possible up there, was you know, wanted to use one of my already permitted vehicles. So essentially, I'm helping the problem. I'm taking one of my tour trucks off of the beach. You know, they're not going to be roaming around the streets looking for the horses like the other 9 companies.
I think the neighbors said they didn't have a problem with the Jeeps, it's the ATVs.
I mean,
That's
I understand that, but I just find that hard to believe. I mean, you could have a Jeep with a muffler system that's 10 times louder than an ATV. You know, I mean, I hear trucks all day long going up and down that beach that are loud. I mean, Harleys, I don't exactly like it when Harleys go down my road, but...
You got Harleys on the beach?
No, but in my house in Kitty Hawk, I do have Harleys, and, you know, I mean, it's loud and obnoxious, but I'm just not one to complain. You know, the next thing for these guys is to complain about the traffic going up Ocean Pearl, you know, a public road. It's a hypocritical area up there, I believe.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make one last observation. Anywhere there's a house built up there, it's not in its natural state. So anybody that has a house up there has had equipment come in, move sand, knock down trees, and done the same thing. So, you know, and I'm not advocating that we pave anything, that we do anything. I'm just saying that we spent, I don't know how many work sessions trying to figure out how to get these guys off the beach. And the first guy that comes forward to get them off the beach, willing to put a muffler over and above, we say no, but everything else is okay. And that's all I have to say.
Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor.
I'd like to
Further
ask
discussion?
one question, Mr. Meredith.
Yes, sir.
You're not going to construct any more trails. What's already there is what you're going to utilize.
You know, and I wanted to respond on that note as well, because they made it seem like I came in there and butchered my own property. I did not cut down one single tree. I went through and trimmed up the oak trees. I didn't cut down one tree. Mike Cherry, a buddy of mine, Currituck Construction, he came through and used a forestry machine because I didn't want him to cut any of the trees down. So it was a bobcat with a big roller on it, and you could mulch a tree from top to bottom and not disturb the root system. So I'm almost offended that, you know, I'm trying to keep this, I'm trying to be conservation minded, and I'm getting played out to be the developer. You know, I'm not, these guys are the developers. They're the ones with the real commercial interest up there with all their rental houses. So it's highly hypocritical to me for them to be able to rent their houses with 20 plus bedrooms, and I can not take half of that impact on my personal property a day, you know.
Any further questions or discussion before I call the question? All in favor of the motion made by Mr. Petrie, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? No.
No.
Okay, seems like that motion does not carry. Does somebody propose an alternative motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion for approval based upon the fact that he is going to get the muffler system before he operates up there. And also, I do want to say that if this motion approves and we have troubles up there, Mr. Meredith knows I'll be the first one to vote to revoke that permit a year from now if it doesn't go as he stated and planned. But that's my motion.
And I'll second that motion.
Discussion on this motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Administrative reports. Presentation of the Currituck County Fiscal Year 2012-13 budget. Mr. Scanlon. 13 slides or less.
We'll be quick. By general statutes, I am named as the budget officer for the county. It is incumbent upon me to prepare a balanced budget and then present it to the Board of Commissioners, which is what we are doing tonight. This is a handoff of the budget, and after tonight it becomes the budget for the Board of Commissioners. So with that, I'd like to take you quickly through the budget that we have. Unlike our federal government, state law does require us to actually have a balanced budget. You do have to have a balanced budget. The one being presented tonight is balanced. It is probably one of the most important things you do. Your budget sets your fiscal policies that you would like to undertake in the next fiscal year. Through this in there, we always seem to talk about the budget as if it's a single thing. We actually have over 25 funds that we have individual budgets for, and the composition of all of those together is what the county budget actually is. In the general fund, the mainstay of our operation, what everybody thinks of, is where our property tax is, and this budget proposes no increase in our property taxes. The budget being presented is actually a zero increase over the current year. I think it's $2,000 more than the current year budget, so it's about as flat as a budget could be. When you take all 25 budgets together, what I'm proposing is a 9.5% decrease next year than what our total budget is this year. The budget does have, after going for several years now without being able to recognize the employees, this budget does have a 2% cost of living in it. And probably the only major service change that I could think of that's in this is we are proposing, after several years of not having a mosquito program, is actually contract and have a mosquito program for the upcoming year. With that said, looking at how we fund government, over half of the cost of government is paid for by property taxes. The 5 largest revenues you see here: property taxes, sales tax, occupancy tax, reserves, and capital improvements. Those revenues right there make up 81% of the total budget is in those 5 revenues alone. We talked during our work session on Friday a little bit about the property valuation. The Currituck County is appraised at a little over $8 billion. You can see that spike around 2005. That was the last time we were revalued. What's more shocking than that is you can see since then that line has actually been about as stagnant as you can get and flat as you can get. We've experienced no growth over the last several years. Wanted to put this slide in there as a point of education as well as a point of prepping for next year with revaluation. The way we determine property taxes, it's 2 things. As you can see, first, it is the property valuation times rate. And you can see how that breaks down. So we take the real property of $8 billion, multiply it by the 32 cent per 100 to come up with the $25.8 million assessment. That would be if we collected 100%. We know we won't collect 100%. We have to be conservative when we do this, and we cannot project collection of property taxes any greater than what we've accrued in the last year. So based on our last year's audit, we collected 98% of our budget of our property taxes, and so you can see where we came up with the $25.8 million. This slide's important because it's the combination of the relationship between the valuation and the rate in this particular side that makes it $25.8 million. Next year, when we start talking about reval, if one generally goes up, the other one generally goes down, and vice versa. We'll be looking at a combination of value and rate that will generate an approximately $25.8 million revenue source. Always asked is how that $8 billion is broken down by region. As you can see, the combination of Corova and Crawler, our Outer Banks properties, makes up 2/3 of the total value of the county. Want to show, this is a good slide to show. The last 10 years, the board has done an excellent job of keeping not only a low tax rate, but a steady tax rate. This is the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, ninth year in a row that we've had a fixed tax rate. Show this slide too. Hopefully next year we could also show this slide. It shows the top 7 lowest tax rates in county government, and you can see we've moved up from 7 to 6. We're the 6th lowest tax rate, and next to that I put the highest, so you can get a comparison of what high means. So Scotland County has just under $1, where Macon is just almost 28 cents, and we come in 6th at 32 cents. As always is mentioned, I think all 5 of the counties ahead of us have some kind of municipal incorporated area. I'm certain to say that if you factored in the municipal tax on top of the county tax, there's certainly an argument to be made that we have the lowest tax rate in the state of North Carolina. The general fund budget that we're proposing tonight is just over $26 million, almost $28 million. Or excuse me, $46 million. You can see here that since we kind of peaked around 2006, 2007. Just about every year from that, we have been decreasing and cutting government associated with the economic downturn. In the last several years, we've kind of flattened out, but the budget being proposed now is actually less than the budget was in 2006, 2007. Funding by sources. You can see public safety makes up the largest thing that we fund as county government. followed by education. We are a service-oriented kind of business, and see that 43% of the budget is actually in the cost of our personnel. The 5 largest things we do: public schools, EMS, sheriff's office, social service, and detention center. Wow. And you can see by far public schools. The 5 largest annual increases in the budget are in these departments here. I would put an asterisk next to the EMS. The majority, or at least half of the increase that they're showing there, the 374, in the course of this year, we have moved the fire marshal from a standalone fire budget into emergency medical services. So his $120,000, $130,000 budget has been added into that. So some of that is not an all increase. It's a combining of 2 departments. You can see the county employment for the last several years has been rather steady. We are proposing in this budget to recommend hiring 1 new position, which I'll go over in a second. The red line there, it's kind of hard to read, but that's public safety. You can see the vast majority of our employees are in the public safety field. This breaks it down by percentage. Over half of our employees are in the public safety field. Over the last 5 years, we've hired 13 people, and you can see, again, biggest thing we do and where we've had those increases has been in public safety. And as I mentioned a second ago, the 1 position we're asking is a wastewater operator. During the course of the year, we have taken over the Walnut Island wastewater system. We are taking over the Waterside Villages system. We have completed the system at Maple. We are in the process of constructing the system up in Moyock, which should be done by the end of the calendar year. So it's necessary for us to bring in a licensed operator to help cover the operation cost of those systems. Public schools, again, the largest thing we do. We should take pride in this. It's been some 15-plus years. I think we have a formula in place that has served us very well. As you can see in the top line, there's actually no increase being projected over the students. The ADM is the average daily membership from this year to next year. This has come from DPI. They're not projecting any increase in students. The other half of that formula is inflation. So you see the 3.2% increase in funding is based solely on inflation for last year. We go from the general county services into the next layer, which is the operating budget. And the operating budget comes in just under $65 million. And you can note here again that it's a decline over the last couple of years. In fact, the operating budget right now that we're coming in with is a little over 8% less next year than the current year. Here's additional funds that we roll into to make the operating budget. The largest ones being our utility, our wastewater systems at $11.3 million, Oxy tax fund at $6 million, and you can see the difference. The only changes that we're proposing in that part of the budget deals with mainly our utility accounts. We have, over the last couple of years, have been systematically walking up in a very methodical way. The Newtown Road sewer rates, they have a flat system, a flat rate, and we're proposing in this budget moving from a 26 flat rate per month to 32. That's an increase of $6. The Moyock Commons District, last year we paid off the debt that this district had. So this year we're asking to decrease the tax rate from 24 cent to 20 cent, and also to decrease their wastewater bill is, as of right now, is 4 times their water usage. And next year we're proposing to drop that down to 3.5, with the intent of continuing this trend over the next 4 or 5 years to where we can completely erase the district tax. And this is in preparation of all these systems up there combining into a single Moyock wastewater system. Walnut Island, when we took this system over, they have a different kind of rate structure than we historically run, and we're proposing to convert them to a volumetric, which would be a multiplier of their water use. Right now we're looking at, I believe, 1.5 to 2 times the water use would be their wastewater, and from our records, this would be a slight decrease in the amount of monthly bill for the folks on that system. To kind of get to the end and talk about the budget, all 25 budgets added together, it's a little bit over $65 million next year being proposed to operate county government. And as you can see, it is a decrease. It's actually a 9.5% decrease over the current year. and the only thing we're flowing in now is the capital funds. So the big capital projects that's in the budget proposed is, we've already announced, and we're underway with the partnership with COA, is the construction of the Aviation and Technical Center. That project will continue next year. This year, we started funding a new 800 megahertz system, a communication system for public safety. That project will continue. There is funds in the budget to start the architectural designs for a new animal shelter. We are continuing to install the multi-purpose fields, as well as some associated amenities out at Maple. The tennis courts at the high school need to be replaced. There's will be funding put in place to replace those. And we're continuing to develop out the rural center. We're looking at funding phase 3, which is development of the rodeo area, and to bring in some additional utilities to allow overnight accommodations. That is a very quick overview. Here is the actual budget. They'll be in my office for public inspection. It'll also be put online where folks can go online and look at it. The schedule, tonight, we're presenting it to you tonight. We're asking that you schedule a public hearing at your next meeting on June 4th. It's at your discretion on whether you adopt the budget at that meeting or not. You just have to adopt it before July 1st because it would take place July 1st. And again, the budget is available in my office, or they can go onto the county website, and we'll have this up sometime mid-morning tomorrow where the general public can go and review the budget. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I understand a major part of the savings was taken away, Commissioner Etheridge's credit card for travel.
I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question.
Excellent job. I think everything seems to be well in hand.
That's because there's never been one.
Sorry, couldn't help. Any other questions or comments about the budget?
I do want to make comment on Ms. Hill and Mr. Scanlon over the last several years, balancing the budget. All of our surrounding counties, municipalities have been cutting their school budgets. We have not. They've laid people off. We have not. They've terminated positions. We have not. And I just would like to thank them for the hard work that they've done bringing in a balanced budget year after year. And as a matter of fact, they've cut the size of the budget for the last several years. So just like to commend the staff for that.
Thank you.
Very good.
If I could, one thing, Mr. Scanlon, you balanced the budget the past couple years by having to take money that we had put aside. This year, our budget, we do not have to take anything from reserve funds. We are operating within what we're taking in for taxes pretty much. Is that not true?
At the end of this year, we expect that to be true, yes. We're projecting that to be true, yes.
All right. Just so folks will know, you got to have a little bit help at all times for contingencies such as this.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Mr. Scanlon.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Etheridge.
Mr. Scanlon mentioned early on in his presentation that unlike the federal government, we're required by the state government to balance our budget. But I think this Board of Commissioners over the last several years has taken it as a moral responsibility not to increase the burden on our citizens in these tough economic times. And this Board of Commissioners have given Mr. Scanlon and Mrs. Hill the direction that we were going to live within our means, and we were going to balance that budget, and we were not going to cut services. And he's done it. And my hat's off to my colleagues up here, because you had to buy into that, I think, moral obligation to protect our citizens that way. So thank you.
An interesting thing is, too, we are still able to make investments for infrastructure that will increase the number of taxpayers keeping the taxes low in the future.
Correct.
Absolutely.
All right, new business, board appointments. Appointment to the Tourism Advisory Board, and I believe mine's the only one on there tonight, and I am suggesting Cheryl Bell to replace Laurie London, who resigned from the Tourism Advisory Board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Commissioners report. I just want to lead off tonight with the comment that Commissioner Idlet, I'm sure you recognize, was not here tonight. He's been a little under the weather. We wish him well. I'll start with Mr. Petrie.
Mr. Scanlon, you make our job easy. Thank you.
Madam Gilbert.
I just want to invite anyone in the Launch Landing development to meet with me on Wednesday night. I'm hosting a public meeting with those residents to discuss some of the issues going on in their neighborhood. I will have some staff available, and this is open to the residents of Launch Landing, 7 o'clock at the Millioc Library.
Commissioner Martin.
I have nothing tonight, thank you.
Commissioner Etheridge.
Yes. This past Saturday was the Sanctuary Vineyards Wine Festival and Food Festival, the Berg. And what I think it pointed out was several years ago when the county was growing so fast, we were all being told that the land in the south end of the county was not suitable for agriculture. But my hat's off to the Wrights for what they have done, because they have produced an alternative crop and agricultural product that is flourishing down there. And if those that missed this one this weekend will go to the next one, they'll truly have a great time, because there was good food, good entertainment, and an opportunity to see people from around the county and socialize.
Very good. Mr. O'Neill.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing.
Right. I'd just like to make a comment. This weekend coming up is Memorial Day. Y'all stay safe.
Yes.
Mr. Scanlon.
Nothing tonight.
Good. All right. I have a motion to adjourn this meeting and reconvene as the tourism advisor.
So move.
So move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Excuse
You-
me.
you- you-
You
Element
got
of
to
third.
continue this meeting, because we've got to go into closed
That's
session.
right.
All right, we got to do that. Okay, I'll entertain a motion then that we continue this meeting.
Recess this meeting and
Recess this meeting.
reconvene as the
Tourism.
Authority.
Second.
All right, okay, second,
With a 5-minute break.
and we need an old man's break for all of us old men.
admit it.
Okay, all of us old men. Hey, I'm close. All right, 5-minute break, 5-minute recess, and then we'll reconvene as a tourism development authority. Mr. Scanlon, you have a budget to present.
Yes, sir. Okay. You're now sitting as the Tourism Development Authority. Just real quick, what this covers is the occupancy tax. When the legislation established and gave us authority to levy an occupancy tax, they also created the Tourism Development Authority. And by that statute, the Board of Commissioners are the Tourism Development Authority, and you are authorized to spend the occupancy tax. By definition, again, general statutes, it's 8 members. It is the 7 Board of Commissioners, and you have one non-voting member, which is the Director of Tourism. The occupancy tax is actually the authorization to allow us to levy an occupancy tax actually came out of 3 local bills. The original 3%, an additional 1%, and then the last 2%. The original 3% has got to be spent on tourism-related expenditures. The additional 1% and 2% has 2/3 to promote travel and tourism and 1/3 to travel expenditures. For the budget for next year, this is how that breaks down. We are projecting that we'll collect a little over $9 million in occupancy tax. Going back to general statutes and applying those, a little over $3 million has got to be spent to promote travel and tourism, with a little over $6 million to support travel-related expenditures. And we keep using those, but these are actually defined in the general statutes, which promote travel and tourism is to distribute and market pamphlets, materials, just to promote and market the county. This is basically the tourism department's budget, and as you can see, the little over $3 million were appropriated in the department. Almost 68% of that goes actually into the marketing program. And the marketing program splits down this way. If you look at this over the last couple of years, you'll see the social media internet part has become larger and larger, and the print ad has gotten smaller and smaller as we've changed our focus into using social media as a way to promote the county versus a traditional advertisement. The $6 million can be used for tourism-related expenditures. This is where the Board of Commissioners has a little bit more discretion. I would like to point out a couple words in this. People tend to look at this and they think tourism. but there's also, in this definition, lodging facilities, meeting facilities, recreational facilities, convention facilities, attracting tourists, or business travels. There's a whole section of the occupancy tax that tends to get overlooked. Here's a list of the top 6 things that we are appropriating money for on the tourism-related. The largest is being to finish up a project at Maple Commerce Park. Additional medical services, we hire additional staff and run additional units on the Outer Banks. The cost of that is in here. The Sheriff's Office hires additional deputies for the Outer Banks during the tourism season. That's in here. Continuing to support the Wellhead Club at $800,000. Lifeguard services, and to, as I mentioned earlier in the previous budget, to continue to develop out the Rural Center. And as I presented the same before, this is going to follow the same schedule, presenting it tonight. You'll have a public hearing on June 4th, at which time you may or may not, at your discretion, adopt the budget, but you do have to adopt the budget by July 1st. And this budget also will be available in my office and also available on the website for people to review. And that is the occupancy tax budget for next year.
Any questions, anybody?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Scanlon, roughly what percentage is returned back to facilities and services on the Outer Banks?
I did this this year. It was a little about 80% of the occupancy tax goes back into services specifically on the Outer Banks.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Chairman, I make a motion that we adjourn as the tourism.
Well, you have a couple budget amendments too in your package to be
Just a
approved.
couple.
Okay, I'll withdraw my premature motion.
Okay, you just watch the prematurity on these things.
Make a motion to approve the budget amendments.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion on what they are?
I've looked down.
Okay, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adjourn as the Tourism Development Authority and reconvene as the Currituck County Board of Commissioners.
I second that motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So done. And we're to convene closed session.
I make a motion that we convene a closed session pursuant to General Statute
143.318.11A6.
to discuss a personnel issue.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Let's convene.